Well, it is finally here. After years of waiting, we finally have Nosferatu on our hands. It is one of the most anticipated horror movies in a long time, and I've been really excited about it too. If you're a horror fan, goth, emo, I think this movie has been on your radar. As much as the director Robert Eggers has been on your radar, he's made really great masterpieces such as The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman, and each one of them has been a masterpiece so far. I think he's just one of those rare directors who hasn't had a miss. And Nosferatu is not an exception. I think it is my favorite movie from him, like on par with The Witch. I'm still deciding which one is better, but it's just full of that just amazing ambience in the movie. Like, it's just great from beginning to end, and I'm really excited to talk about it because I'm also going to talk about the philosophy of the film and the deep underlying themes in Nosferatu. So let's get into the movie because there's a lot to sink our teeth in. So Nosferatu is a remake of the 1922 movie of the iconic vampire that we all saw for the first time in SpongeBob, let's not lie about it. But in the movie itself is an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which made the vampire theme just popular in the entire world. I think the theme of vampires has been really great in the history of horror, and I like that this movie continues it, since we really haven't had any vampire-centric movies that have taken the pop culture by storm since Twilight, and you know how I feel about those movies. But the point is, the movie's really good, the story is amazing, and I really liked all of the things in it. The setting and the gloominess reminded me of Bloodborne, which made me realize like how amazing would it be if Robert Eggers directed a movie version of Bloodborne or a TV show. I think that would make me the happiest person in the world. But the film itself covers a lot of different themes, and especially with the characters. It stars Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp as Ellen and Thomas, the main characters of the movie, who are tormented by the Count Orlok, the vampire in this movie, who is played by Bill Skarsgård, and who's basically a horror icon by this point. I really love his performance in this, and you can see a lot of the same things from Pennywise in his performance as Orlok. And it also stars Willem Dafoe. There's a lot of characters who suffer and just go through really intense moments of horror based on the way Count Orlok wants to make them suffer after his obsession with Ellen. And this takes us to the first theme in the movie, which is lust and obsession. Also, this video will contain spoilers for Nosferatu, so if you haven't seen it, skip ahead. In the beginning of the movie, Thomas, a real estate agent, has to travel to the mansion of Count Orlok in order to sell him a property in his town. And in this journey, he discovers that this count is not what it seems like, and he faces a lot of trouble along the way, especially with the villagers around the castle who behave in really strange and occult ways that reminded me of games like Resident Evil Village or Midsommar. I feel like the whole folk horror aspect was present in this movie, but isn't really quite explored that much, but I just really love the themes that covers, because that is something that people really forget nowadays, is how scary it must have been in those times to live in an era where people were very isolated. You didn't if you had to send somebody to go to a different country, it took weeks of travel, like it shows in this movie, and also to send letters. So information traveled very slowly. There was a lot of mystery, and that's why people invented myths and fables around things like vampires or legends in the forest. It was just very different a mentality that we have today in our industrialized era, and that adds to the horror of the environment that these characters live in. And to briefly summarize the beginning, when he arrives at the castle, he encounters Count Orlok. He realizes he is very intense in the way he behaves. It's obvious that there's something very, very wrong with him. And then he asks him for his locket, which contains a photo of his wife. He becomes obsessed with his wife, Ellen, and that's where all shit breaks loose. From this point on, Thomas realizes he's screwed. He realizes he has to leave the castle, and he also comes to the conclusion that Count Orlok is obsessed with his wife. And that's where the main plot of the movie really takes place, because at the same time, Ellen is suffering from very strange dreams, like horrifying delusions. She is becoming paralyzed. She can't move. She starts screaming in foreign tongues. It's really intense the way they portray that. The horror from these scenes reminded me of The Exorcist 2. It's just it mixes all these different types of horror, including this scene of possession, which leads to very intense feelings of discomfort. And the reason behind all this has to do with Ellen's obsession with Orlok and vice versa. I feel like there's as much from her part towards him that it is from the Count towards her, even though there are scenes which make the audience know that she does not want to be under his spell. She's basically being manipulated, and that deals with the topic of obsession and lust, which I think it is part of what Ellen is feeling towards Orlok. There's specifically a scene where she confesses to Thomas what happened a couple years ago, where she had a an encounter with Orlok, and it is very intense the way she tells it, because it is obvious that, well, she's first of all married to Thomas, and she doesn't want to admit that she had this relationship with the vampire. So there's an aspect of shame there, and an aspect of trying to suppress her sexuality that is shown throughout her relationship with the Count. The Count's character also shows the toxic traits of infatuation. For example, when you fall in love with somebody based on just pure physical appearance, you don't know what they're like, it leads to a more of a feeling of infatuation more than love. So if you're a man obsessed with a woman and you become very intense, that can be reflected in very toxic ways. And that is something that has existed since forever. And I think that is an aspect that is reflected through the Count Orlok's obsession with Ellen. And that's what all the horrifying parts of the movie lead to. And that's what leads to the second theme of the movie, which is fear. And more than fear is just the intense fear of the unknown and of things you can't control. Count Orlok does not only symbolize lust and obsession, but also to all the other people in the town, he symbolizes just the intense fear of the unknown. This is represented by the way that vampires and things like witches symbolizes fear of things you don't understand, especially in times where people did not know much about science, much about why events happen, for example, plagues. I feel like that is also shown through the way, for example, a plague ship arrives to the town. Rats from the ship start spreading disease all over the city with the arrival of Count Orlok to his new home. And I feel like that is the main representation of this, like how people used to blame, for example, droughts and natural disasters on witches because they needed a scapegoat, and they didn't understand that that's not what happens in reality. I think that is just shown through the character of Orlok. So naturally, in times of crisis, people have to find somebody to blame, and that's why they try to kill him. Only that in the case of the story, it is actually him, like the monster is causing all this calamity across the city. And it is justified here, but in real life, it was just used as a scapegoat. But I thought that theme was very interesting, and I think that Robert Eggers wanted to portray that through the movie. So there's an intense fear towards the occult and towards basically this demon creature that is living in the new house. So I also like the way that the professor, played by Willem Dafoe, tries to outsmart the vampire by trying to go there, tricking Thomas, tricking Ellen into basically lead him to sunlight. And at the end of the movie, sadly, Ellen dies, but she sacrifices herself to defeat Orlok. And I feel like the way they did it was really good. I think the ending should have shown a little bit more about this world that Robert Eggers crafted. I'm really big on world building more than the story, so I feel like that ending where Orlok dies in the arms of Ellen as she also dies just also symbolizes the way that she basically ends that obsession, and she has to do what she has to do in order to defeat this villain that is terrorizing everything. And overall, the movie I think was amazing. I gave it an 88 out of 100. I think it was just great, and those are all my thoughts on Nosferatu. So if you like the movie, please let me know in the comments what do you think about it, and that will be everything for this video. So I'll see you guys in the next time, and have a great day.